Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center, and it's that time of the week, taking a look at the coolest new knives that have just hit our shelves. Let's check them out. All right, we're starting things off this week with our latest exclusive. It's the Viper Turn. Fantastically designed and shaped knife. I mean, just check out the awesome lines of this model. Big fan. Coming in about $250 for this version, and our exclusive is wearing these green jungle wear carbon fiber scales that look really, really, really cool. You get a bit of that shimmer from the carbon. It's almost like a bit of that marbled texture going on, but then you get the layers of the green as well for just a really cool look. I think it really backs up this blade shape as well, which has always had like custom bladesmithing vibes to it, like the fixed blades you'd see from like ABS Smiths and that sort of thing. But you've got it in an M390 blade coming in about 3¼ inches long. Very utilitarian in addition to looking very awesome. High flat grind. It's going to slice and poke very nicely. The frame is titanium and you've got integrated bolsters there with it. Deep carry pocket clip as well. Very deep carry, in fact. You can see it's sticking out above the back end of the knife handle very nicely. And then it's a lockback mid-mounted, but you've also got ball bearings in the pivot here, which is not typically combined all that often. And as such, you can actually flick open that lockback very, very easily. Crown spine keeps it nice. That continues through the back. Feels pretty good in the hand. It's not necessarily like a heavy working knife type of handle, but fits in there quite nicely. Looks great for kind of a bit of a gentleman's knife even. If you want a little bit more attitude, it's going to be great, or just a nice fancier EDC. Now, if the carbon and green is a bit too subtle for you, I've got a new gold class Benchmade that you might like with the, oh shoot, what are they calling this? That's just white and black marbled carbon fiber handles. Same, very similar type of execution there, but you've got white layers instead of the green that you saw on that previous knife. This is, of course, the Tengu, a Jared Oser design, gold class version coming in at $550. With the blade, you got a Bifrost Damasteel pattern, which marries up or matches up kind of nicely with that handle. They're definitely kind of leaning into that kind of vibe. 2.7, 2.8 inches on the blade length. A little bit thicker, but with the Damasteel there, you've got a lot of edge retention there behind it, even if this is not necessarily like the sliciest knife out there. But these have always had very good action as well. It is a liner lock and it is a flipper, something you don't see too often from Benchmade, but they've always done a really good job with this model. Now they've also given it some blue accenting, both on the hardware, the pivot, and the backspacer screws here, as well as a G10 shield on each side. So even though this is nothing at all like looking like a old school knife, you get kind of that old school tie-in of like the old shields you would see, or the old emblems you would see inlaid into traditional like slip joint handles, that sort of thing. You also got blue liners and a piece of raffia there as the backspacer itself. So it's a little see-through. You see some of the copper threaded, fabric, essentially. Not fabric, but you know what I mean. But you get the little bit of the waves there. And it's kind of a comment I've made before. Like normally that thing's strong enough to carry a knife handle on its own, but here everything else is so out there, it's playing like a supporting role, but it does it pretty well. Now they've also jazzed up the pocket sleeve that goes with this knife. It's still leather, but you've got a very aggressive texture kind of printed on there. Not printed, but stamped, I guess. Almost looks like just really heavy skin texture in a way. Gives a little bit more surface area going on, so maybe it won't slip around as much as the smooth version. Not that that is particularly slippy, but that might give you a little more there. Blue thread, and what's nice is they didn't cheap out on the sheath and have it made somewhere else. A lot of companies, just due to economies of scale, tend to have to do that, but this sheath is still made here, right here in the US. Next up, we've got a cold steel. This is the Silver Eye, and this is another kind of oversized gentleman's knife. It's a hard-working knife that still has some classy vibes going on. Comes in about $230 right now. The blade is S35VN, about 3.5 inches. Just an all-around great drop point shape. Carbon fiber for the handles and the triad lock, of course, so you've got a lot of strength on this nicer looking knife, and very slim scales as well. So very easy to carry in the pocket. The sides are smooth, so it's not going to tear up your pants too much. It's going to be nice and flat and out of the way until you need it. And then you've got a nice big knife here, a lot to carry around. Pocket clip is reversible for either side, not deep carry though. And the opening hole or opening method here is kind of fun. There's a hole through it, obviously, as you can see, but there's also like a stepped thumb stud going on surrounding the hole. So it's almost like they combined the best elements of Spyderco's spider hole opening with like the angled thumb studs of the Kershaw Blur into one thing. And it actually works very nicely. You've got plenty to grab onto with your thumb there. I think even if you were wearing a pair of gloves, although maybe you'd be wearing a pair of dress gloves rather than work gloves, still gonna be easy to open up. Yeah, I don't know what more to say. It's pretty cool and it works really nicely too. Overall, what I really think sums this knife up is if you want something that has some slightly classier vibes, I say slightly because, look at it, but you still have a lot of capability and it's easy to carry around. This is definitely going to be a very good option. All right, next up, we have got a new Microtech, a new version of the Stormtrooper Exocet coming in about $312 right now. And the difference from before, they used to have this in the double-edged dagger profile. You can now get it in the Tanto shape with or without serrations in this pretty cool colorway. You've got a high gloss white finish. This is not like a dull matte finish. Definitely a lot of reflections there. They pull that onto the blade. And then for black accents, you've got the side switch, the tail piece here, as well as the broad money clip style clip with the Imperial symbol there on it as well. But you've got good looks, good grade action, and good EDC capabilities as well. I know some folks aren't necessarily the biggest fans of the Exocet because they're more used to Microtech's kind of slimmer and longer bladed things out there. But this is a really nice knife for EDC. I've wound up carrying not one of these Stormtrooper ones, but using one of these for a few weeks to try out, and it really works well. The broad aluminum chassis here gives you a lot to hold on to despite the short size. You really can get a good grip on that. It's just a very handy blade shape to use day to day. All right, next up, we have got some Balisongs from D-Rocket Designs. It is his Parabellum and Micro Parabellum, or the large Parabellum and Micro Parabellum. Here we go. The large Parabellum, of course, 4-inch blade, M390 steel, $550. Really nice details, titanium handles. But I really want to talk about the Micro there. You've got a 2-inch blade on this guy, $425. Everything else is pretty much the same. You've got nicely executed details, but it's kind of fun sitting it here next to that Exocet because they've got almost the same blades, or at least in terms of the edge going on. Not identical, mind, of course, I'm not claiming that, but there's some nice echoes there between the two. And in a way, this little 2-inch version, obviously it's not going to be the best for doing tricks, like can do the flip open and close, but I doubt you're going to be going through any big routines with this. But it's a small pocket knife, honestly. Maybe even a good 5th pocket EDC pocket knife carry there. Got the latch on there, folds up nice and small, doesn't take up a ton of room. I mean, barely any more space than you think of like the Leatherman, what's the one? Not the Juice, not the Style, the next one up, the Squirt, the Leatherman Squirt. It's like that, but a little longer in a way. So not a lot of space in the pocket. And the advantages, of course, of a butterfly knife for EDC is very unlikely that one or both pivots are going to break and allow the blade to close on you. So it doesn't have a lock, but there is some active safety or passive safety involved just from holding this knife and using it as you would, which is pretty cool. As for the tricksters, the flippers out there, you'll probably want to go for the large one between the two. Interestingly, the latch is on the safe handle here rather than on the bite handle. And I don't know, for me, I think the handles are a little bit wider or a little bit thicker than they are wide. So it feels a little bit different in the hand than most of the Bally's that I'm used to, even though I'm not an expert flipper by any stretch of the imagination. But man, just such a clean looking design overall. All right, next up, we've got some new case Copperheads that are just in. Several different handle variants. I've only pulled 2 of them here. A green, or what are they calling this exactly? It's a Bermuda green bone. That's the peach seed jig pattern going on. I am always a sucker for green jigged bone with brass accents. As you guys know from some of my Nordsmith stuff out there, that's just a classy combination for me. These guys come in about 60 bucks, and I've also got a red, white, and blue kind of patriotic Kieranite here that comes in about 65. Kieranite's pretty cool too. Both of these two handles offer, in their own way, offer a little bit of extra grip over some things out there. The jig bone one is obvious, you've got more texture there to hold on to, but Kieranite is a pretty interesting material. It's a type of acrylic, and similar to stuff like micarta, and it behaves in a different way, but when it is wet, if you're having a sweaty hand, it doesn't feel tacky, but you kind of stick to it a little bit better, which is kind of interesting. And then on top of that, you've got just two great blades, nice half stop in the travel there. You've got your standard clip blade as well as a smaller pen blade on each of these. But overall, these are just a great sized EDC case knife. You've got about a 3-inch main blade, a little bit, about 2 1/4 on the pen blade, and enough handle there to get a solid grip on it. Case is standard stainless steel, which, you know, you guys, it's the old reliable stuff. It's not a super steel, but it certainly works. It's a really cool pattern, and you got some really nice looking materials. And again, like I said, these are just two of the new batch we just got in. We'll leave a link to all of them below. All right, next up we got some bushcraft stuff. We got some new variants of the Casstrom number 10. Fantastic bushcraft knife, and Casstrom does a really great job with them as well. Finished nicely, seamless on the transition from handle to spine. Nice sharp edge, nice crisp spine. Not as crisp as like an LT Wright, but it should be good enough to throw your spark, no problem. Two versions of this. This is the 14C28N, so a stainless steel version, and an 02 tool steel version, which isn't the same as 01, but it's in the same ballpark. And this guy comes in about $125 right now. For that, you've got these really nice handles. It's green linen micarta, and some really strong separation between the layers on that green as well. I really like that. And then you've got a dark green liner along the spine to kind of anchor things in quite nicely. Standard Corby bolts and a lanyard hole there. 4-inch blade thereabouts, spear point shape going on, Scandi grind. It's what you want from a bushcraft knife, really. Sheath has a nice classic vibe to it as well. Black leather, makes a really strong package altogether. We've also got these in curly birch right now, or some new variants of that. You've seen curly birch before from them, well, many times certainly, but a few new versions right now. Really nice, real comfortable in the hand, and for those of you who kind of want like the classic Ray Mears knife, of course famous bushcraft instructor who worked with Alan Wood to create the Woodlore knife, a very famous bushcraft pattern. This is in the ballpark. You get a little more drop to the handle here on this Casstrom, but it's going to get you pretty close without having to pay, you know, custom prices for one of those official Ray Mears knives. But if you want to save even more money and you want to kind of do a little bit of stuff on your own, you don't save a ton of money, but you can get a kit version of this knife that comes with the standard steel blade here, and this is the 02 blade, I believe. Let me make sure of that. Yes, it is. And it comes with a set of Corby bolts. There should be a lanyard tube in there. There is not. Never mind. No lanyard tube included, but you've also got a nice set of curly birch blocks there for handle scales. You're going to have to kind of know what you're doing or look into some instructional stuff out there to complete this knife, but everything's there, and the price is about $95 right now. So it's a pretty cool option if you're looking to do something a little bit special. So I actually just realized that this the kit does not come with a sheath either. So you're probably not actually going to save money by going this direction, like I said at the beginning. So just forget I said that. If you're looking to, you know, for the value, buy the completed knife. But if you're looking to do something special, go for the kit. We've also got, not a kit, but you can buy a blade blank of their Safari knife now as well, coming in about $54. You'll have to supply the attachment hardware and the handle scale material, but you got a nice blade here to back it up. 2.5 inch on the blade itself, 12C27 stainless. And speaking of Alan Wood, this is actually an Alan Wood design. It's the Safari, calls it the Mini Hunter. Yes, Safari Mini Hunter there on the back. Great hunting knife, as the name might suggest, but I think it's a really cool EDC pattern as well. Nice drop point style on the shape. It's got a hollow grind, so you get a nice keen edge. Good size overall. It's not going to take up too much space, but you've got a lot of utility in this size. Next up, we've got a new version of the Exotac fireRod. This is the XL, and these come in about $51, and for that you've got a 1/2-inch ferro-rod, 1/2-inch fire steel on the end. Judging by that, we'll say it's about 3.5 inches. I don't know if that's right or not, but I'm just looking at it. You got a lot of sparks embedded into this rod. And if you were to actually go through them at some point, these are replaceable as well. Exotac will be able to sell you a replacement. And there's actually a good amount of thread in there, so it's not likely to come loose too easily. If it were just a few rotations of thread, might be worried about that. But as you can see, that's quite a bunch. Aluminum body, just like the standard versions, but instead of just bare aluminum on the outside, they've actually coiled a few turns of a heavy-duty repair tape here. It looks like Gorilla Tape, but they don't say it is specifically, so I won't tell you it is, but it's something along those types of vibes, that kind of really strong duct tape style of tape. Really nice to have on you, especially on something like this where it doesn't take up any extra room whatsoever. And then screw off the cap on the top, which of course is waterproof. You've got an O-ring seal there. You've got some tinder tabs there in the handle of the fire steel, and you can of course replace those or put whatever you want in there as well. Really nice piece, made in the USA. The aluminum is done very precisely, as with everything Exotac. You better be able to get a fire going with that bad boy for sure. All right, next up, another green thing, but not at all a bushcraft thing. New Heretic, this is the Nephilim fixed blade. Comes in about $4.90. You've got a 6.5-inch L-Max blade, double edge, so you're over 12 inches of sharpened edge on this bad boy right here. Really nice dark stone-washed finish on the flats, or on the ground portions of the blade, with satin flats, look really nice. G10 for the handles, green in this case, and full tang, but you've got some essentially sunken jimping on the tang around the handle. It's not bitey, it's not sharp, but you do get a little bit of extra grip. And speaking of that grip, like the whole feel in the hand, the thing that strikes me about this knife is it's not that heavy. It's very well balanced. It's light enough that it's not going to feel too bulky day to day. I say day to day. Are you really carrying a knife like this day to day? Most of us definitely not, unless we're working in very specific circumstances. But it's a really cool knife regardless, that's for sure. I really like what they did with the sheath as well. It's Kydex, but it's actually got essentially a green carbon fiber pattern going on with it. It's really cool stuff, and it comes with a tech lock there on the back ready to go. So you can carry it all kinds of different orientations, horizontal, vertical, inverted, all the good stuff. All the good stuff you want. Do be careful, it is double-edged. Normally you would push off on the Kydex here when you're pulling out, but it is double-edged, so just be a little careful. Ask me how I know you need to be careful. It's not from this, it came from something else, but you know what I'm talking about. All right, next up we've got another fixed blade, another combat fixed blade about the same size. This is a Dwyer custom BG Tanto, and it comes in about $8.75 right now. Blade itself, 7 inches long, CPM 154. Looks to be about 3/16 of an inch thick, so it's nice and stout. We are hollow ground here on the back section, flat there. No, we're also hollow there at the front. You do have the blackened finish to kind of minimize most of the reflections, but he did kind of chamfer the edge here on each side of the spine after the coating, so you get a little bit of a glint from that. And it also comes in and helps that point be just a little more acute as well. A few different handles are available right now. This is one of the G10 options, full tang, as you can see. A little bit of like that classic Bowie knife influence in the handle itself, at least. You get it's not quite the coffin-shaped handle or the octagonal handle, but there are some echoes of that in this guy. I think my favorite detail about this knife, though, is actually the brass spacer here that acts as a crossguard. Some really cool things are going on. You do see the brass finish from the ring from the outside, but the top and the bottom are both blackened. Kind of a cool look. And it actually is, this ring is what provides the retention in the Kydex sheath. You can see it sits right there flush with the edge of that brass, which is pretty cool. And even though there is a gap here, I'm kind of reminded of like some old school Scandinavian knives, especially some of the neck knives they would wear, where the whole knife would basically sit almost all the way in their leather sheath and be flush, very similar to this, mostly to keep out like snow and moisture. That's not quite going to happen with this, but I don't know, it just reminded me of that anyway. As far as attachment, you've got a small strap here with a pull-the-dot snap, so it only opens in one direction, less likely to come unsnagged accidentally. And for a big knife like this seems to me to be set up to be able to carry the sheath itself inside the waistband and loop this around your belt. Kind of interesting for, like I said, such a large knife, but if that's not your thing, large tech lock again is what you want to do so you can carry it in more standard belt configurations. Your whole pattern there will work just fine with one of those. All right, next up we've got the big boy here from Sniper Bladeworks. This is their signature reload Smatchet, coming in at $250, which after the prices of the last two knives, that's almost a bit of a bargain in this case. Now, the original Smatchet was, of course, designed by William Fairbairn, who very famously, his name is attached to the Fairbairn Sykes dagger and then the Applegate Fairbairn dagger as well. Definitely more famous for those, but the Smatchet was also something he came up with. Handle was very different than this Sniper Bladeworks version, but the blade, this broad, leaf-shaped, heavier chopping blade, has a lot of very strong similarities to that original. We've got 9.5 inches on this guy, 1095. You've got a black PVD coating to help, again, bring the reflections down as well as protect that carbon steel underneath from corrosion. Stout flat grind here, very nicely finished edge, and a swedge here about 2/5 of the front edge of the blade. Not sharpened here at the back. You probably could if you wanted to. It might be pretty thick if you did, but not intended for that. More intended to, the swedge in this case is going to give you some of those hydrodynamic properties when you're moving through soft materials, that sort of thing, on a sort of angle. That's going to help the efficiency there. On top of that, I think this is not just necessarily a combat style design. There's a bit going on here that's going to give you some more utility. The blade itself, the handle itself is G10 and it's angled down a little more than the originals were. First off, that's going to give you a little more leverage perhaps on some of the heavier chops, but you've got some choil sections here where you can choke up on, even 2 prominent choils here right behind the edge if you wanted to, and really get behind there to do some finer work. And when you're doing that, the balance is not that bad. It's still just a little bit blade heavy, but not by much. So you really could get in there to do some survival or bushcraft stuff if you really need it. Now the sheath is not Kydex, but it is a strong injection molded style. And one of the things I like about what you'll see here is rather than just relying on the outside rivets for the stability on the provided Techlock style attachments, this is one of the dots attachments here, but it's the same concept. They've got a second set of threaded holes here in the middle of the blade, or in the middle of the sheath, both on the front and on the back. So you can actually, as you can see, put 4 screws into that, which is going to be really helpful because there is some weight behind this knife. I mean, overall, we're looking, with the sheath, we're just over 2 pounds. So it's not a light thing to put on your belt. So having that extra stability there, that extra strength, definitely going to come in handy. We've also got some folders from Sniper as well. And like that blade, or like that Smatchet, they're a bit on the overbuilt side. This is the Signature Reload DMF. And this guy comes in at about $450 right now. You can kind of think of this as having maybe similar vibes to like kind of the Medford style things out there, but this one of course has a little bit more of like some classy touches, so to speak, with these brass inlays here and the gold anodized pivot ring and lanyard tube there at the back. G10 on the front is contoured, titanium stonewashed on the back is flat. One of the things I really do like about their frame lock execution here, though, is a very, very thin cut line between the lock bar and the main body itself. Very, very thin, in fact. They probably couldn't have done anything to that after doing the initial cut without actually widening that out, so it feels very precise. Blade itself is on the chunkier side, as you kind of could see and kind of would have expected from a design like this. S30V, 3.5 inches, stout. You know, we're looking about 3/16 of an inch on that guy too, with about a mid-height flat grind there. So it's not about slicing efficiency. This guy is just about power. Along similar lines, we've got the Signature Reload LPC coming in about $325. Similar story here, but a little more utilitarian in its aesthetic, and the blade shape is a little less straight utility and a little more kind of all around and slightly more tactical with this guy. Still 3.5 inches, still S30V though. You don't get kind of the brass touches here. They kept it more plain Jane with the G10. Stonewashed titanium on the back with the frame lock, and not quite as thin of a cutout on this one as on the that previous knife, but that's okay. In terms of the feel in the hand, it is pretty good. You've got a single thumb stud here, pops open really nicely. Decent amount of real estate on the handle itself, so even without using that finger choil there at the front, you don't really feel you need it in order to have a solid grip. But if you are using this in kind of a tactical inspired role, your fingers are going to be a little farther away from the edge when you're holding it like this, which can be kind of nice. And then when you want to, you can choke up, get there right behind the edge. And a really cool feature you see right here, you don't see it a lot, but you do see a nice crowned, what's the word I want to use there? Front of the finger guard right there in the leading edge of the ricasso, or the bottom edge of the ricasso there. Just a nice little touch to see. Now, one of the things I was kind of reminded of from these snipers is not so much the Medford comparison I made earlier, but I was reminded of some of the custom works from Greg Lightfoot in terms of his overbuilt everyday carry folders. So it's appropriate that we've got a couple new Lightfoots in right now as well, including this one right here, one of his custom ground fighters, coming in just under $2,000 right now. 3 3/8 on the blade, Nitro V. You've got a deep hollow grind and kind of that signature Lightfoot element. You've got a single swedge here on the front side of the blade, not all the way to the tip and not on the reverse side as well. Definitely one of his core design elements that makes it instantly recognizable as a Lightfoot. Likewise, you've also got his 6-gun pivot. On each side looks like the cylinder of a revolver, of course. Richlight handles on these guys. Oh, sorry, no, paper micarta, which Richlight is essentially paper micarta. But you get some really cool lines here, really cool layers going on. Slim titanium pocket clip, and like I said, chunky in the handle. Like he always does that. That's kind of his thing on knives like this. Plenty to hold on to. Nice thick titanium liners, which is essentially as strong as a frame lock. I mean, you can see how thick of a piece you've got there. And of course, it is going to flip open quite nice. It's got a very smooth pull, not so much a crisp detent, but it does work very, very well. All right, well, that's all I've got time to show you today. Make sure to let me know your favorites down in the comments as always. And if you want to get your hands on any of these guys, we'll leave links in the description as well. And that'll take you over to the KnifeCenter. Make sure you sign up for our Knife Rewards program too, because if you're going to spend your money on one of these knives, might as well earn some free money to spend on your next one. I'm David C. Anderson from the KnifeCenter, signing off. See you next time.